It's where the buck stops, the president's desk. What does it take to survive the pressures and to have an impact? Each had their defining moments, and the moments they deeply regret. In my interviews with 8 U.S. presidents, they talked about their most difficult decisions. And now we know that there were no weapons of mass destruction. Was it worth it?
Oh, absolutely.
We examined life-changing events like the assassin's bullet that nearly killed Ronald Reagan.
I didn't know I was shot. I thought it was fireworks. After I got in the car, all of a sudden I felt the most excruciating pain I've ever felt.
But most important, each president revealed his inner thoughts about the challenges he faced that would define his legacy.
If you will place your left hand on the Bible...
For Richard Nixon, it was the Watergate scandal.
There's not the slightest suggestion that I had any knowledge of the planning for the Watergate break-in.
He is the only U.S. president to quit while on the job.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Nixon left in disgrace, done in by his own secret Oval Office recordings, which proved he knew about the Watergate break-in. I sat down several times with President Nixon.
You were with us so much that somebody wondered if you weren't part of the party.
But the most difficult was his first live interview after leaving the White House. Are you sorry you didn't burn the tapes?
Yes, I think so, because they were private conversations subject to misinterpretation, as we have all seen.
Every time I saw him from then on, he apologized.
I made my mistakes, as we're quite aware.
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear.
When Vice President Gerald Ford was sworn in, he became the first and only U.S. president not to be voted into office. Another first. A month later, Ford pardoned Nixon.
A full, free, and absolute pardon unto
a controversial gesture that may have cost him the next election.
It hurt you in this election.
I'm sure, Barbara, that it had an adverse impact. True. I just decided, regardless of the political consequences, that I would do what I thought was right.
President Ford built a reputation for falling down those slippery Air Force One stairs. But I couldn't summon the courage to ask him about that.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer from Georgia, was a Southern gentleman, at least on the surface, and fortunate for me because it was my first presidential special.
Ah, you mean? Do you have a cold, hard, mean streak? Do those blue eyes get cold and tough? And...
Well, I'm mean enough to protect myself and to win if I'm in a battle.
And there is another moment with the Carters that took me years to live down.
I just pray that I will never disappoint the American people.
Why couldn't I have just left well enough alone?
Be wise with us, Governor, and be good to us.
Try.
Ugh.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
For the first President Bush, the issue was credibility. He was accused of being too nice.
Should we say that terrible word? This wimp factor.
In other words, he vacillated on major issues. Are you sorry that you ever said, read my lips, no new taxes?
I'm not sorry in the sense of trying to hold the line on taxes, but I think it caused a credibility problem at the time, and so I would have to rank that as not a howling success, put it that way.
It didn't help that Mrs. Bush sometimes openly contradicted the president, but it gave me an amusing insight to the inner workings of their, at that time, 44-year marriage.
You felt that some of his answers, perhaps during the campaign, were not as strong about the homeless as they should have been, and it was something true?
I saw that too. I thought it was outrageous.
That's not true or untrue?
What's that mean?
It is of a great concern, and you wanted him to know it. Is that it?
Well, I think he knew it.
She criticized some answer I gave. I wouldn't say chastised me for it. Wasn't exactly, but...
You must have told. I didn't tell.
I, William Jefferson Clinton.
When Bill Clinton arrived in Washington, the central question was about his character, an issue in the 1996 presidential campaign. How important is it for the president to be a role model?
I think it's important for the president to be a role model as a leader for the country, but I don't think that means that we should turn our politics into one long, endless, dark night of demeaning, mean-spirited personal attacks. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The president, with the best intentions, made some of the worst personal mistakes. Nevertheless, he left office with the highest approval rating in history. Always articulate, in my most recent encounter, Clinton spoke eloquently about the harsh reality of facing death. When you had your quadruple bypass surgery, what impact has that had on you today?
I realized, that if I hadn't made it through that surgery, I would have still had a life more full, more rich than the vast majority of people that ever lived. I decided that, if people survive for a reason, that my reason should be to give those chances to other people.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
From the first days of his presidency, George W. Bush faced a list of challenges, none bigger than this.
There is one report that a plane has hit the World Trade Center.
Mr. President, you were in a classroom of second graders reading a school children's book when your chief of staff whispered in your ear. What did he say, and what did you feel?
He said a second airplane has hit the World Trade Center. America is under attack.
What were your thoughts?
I knew I needed to be clear-headed, and I was anxious to get out of the classroom to get the facts.
When did you say to yourself, this means war?
When I learned that the crash was not an accident, but looked like a planned attack, I knew we're entering into a whole new era in American history, that we were at war.
Of all of my presidential interviews, the most unforgettable would have to be with the universally popular Ronald Reagan.
Win just one for the Kipper.
A former actor, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild long before he was president of the United States.
You, of course, are being called all the time the great communicator. Do you think that any of that is the acting experience?
I have often wondered what some people in positions of this kind, how do they manage without having had that experience?
I took a memorable ride with the Gipper on Thanksgiving 1981 at his private ranch in his now famous Jeep.
I hope you're a good driver. You know what you're doing, I hope.
Yes, I've been driving this for quite a while. You probably deduced that it wasn't new.
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but this is the scroungiest Jeep. The upholstery is coming out. I mean, I know we have an austerity program, but this is ridiculous.
President Reagan was down to earth and forthright. He seemed to have the capacity to make the country feel better.
Mr. President, this ranch is a very special place for you. What happens to you here? What does it do for you?
Well, it almost casts a spell. It is truly a Shangri-La. And it just, well, I guess the scriptural line is right. I look to the hills from whence cometh my strength. I've always believed that there was some plan that put this continent here to be found by people to come here and develop a whole new breed of people called American. You look at the beauty of it, and God really did shed his grace on America, as the song says.